Hello, everyone. Today I'm chatting to Carley Simandl. I think I pronounced it wrong now, actually.
No, no, it was
Oh,
perfect.
it was perfect. Well, welcome. It's so lovely talking to you today. You are a nutritionist and also a yoga teacher, really focusing on health and skincare and, well, everything beauty related to empower women, I think, to stand in their power and beautiful light. So, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure. I'm so glad that I found you on social media and that we're connected.
Yes, I already was invited by you a few weeks back to do a sharing on Instagram, which was lovely. And now this time I thought like let's change it up and let me ask you some questions. So that's what we're gonna do today. So you're all about actually empowering women, but also really in terms of food and health and skincare, right? And I think right now in the chaos that we in worldwide and everything happening, everything they're telling us to do is actually not what we need as humans to function properly. Let's say it like that. So I think food is one of the most important things and most important medicine that we can actually use ourselves as a tool to feel healthy. What would you advise people during these days where they also need to stay in, for example, and maybe are in fear that they can change up, like nutrition wise, to stay healthy?
Ah, great question. Sometimes more important than what you eat is what you don't eat. So I ask people to make that, commitment and handshake with each other or with themselves to just get really raw and real about what they're consuming. And then I love the analogy of taking people through a visualization. Okay, so picture the most incredible, high tech, high octane jet that you have ever seen in your life. Think futuristic, right? You would
Mm,
never put lawnmower fuel in that piece of fine machinery and expect it to run flawlessly in the sky the way it's designed to do.
mm,
And then I let them in on this little secret that their body is that high octane, fine piece of machinery, and that it really matters what they feed their body. So I talk in the line of food is fuel. However, I like to further it and say food is more than fuel. Food is the future architect of your
mm.
body. And another way of saying this, because people will always say, like, well, what are your bones made of? Calcium. Okay, that's the too obvious answer. So your bones are made of what you've been feeding your body for the past 20, 30, 40, 50 years. I don't know what your bones are made of because I only you know what you've been eating. Are you eating out of a vending machine? Are you eating deep fried fast food that's based on greed, corporate convenience, all of those, that tripod that is not in favor of our health? Or are you eating natural foods, alive foods, good quality foods? Do you use herbs and spices? Because Hippocrates said way back in, I think, 450 BC, um, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. So, just like you said in the intro, I mean, food is the source. Of course, water is the source as well. And we're walking columns of water. And it's important to reconnect to the way that nature provides in its whole form, eating a plant as opposed to eating food that's manufactured in a plant with the energy of making profit, because of course the energy currency transfers, and if the food is sprayed with poison and, pesticide, larvicide, fungicide, I think that food probably wants to commit suicide before it gets to the grocery store shelf. And then it's preserved. It can stay on the shelf for years. I mean, if the food itself doesn't expire, how is the body supposed to break it down if it's preserved for 10 years? Does the body know how to break it down with its innate intelligence with all of these artificial preservatives? So eat clean, eat natural, eat alive, good quality foods. Think quality over quantity, and eat the colors of the rainbow as well, because we're meant to interact with pigment. Pigment is a direct reflection of antioxidants. They don't really teach this in school. So the higher the pigment, the higher the antioxidant. By the way, I'm not knocking cauliflower. Cauliflower, it doesn't necessarily have a lot of pigment, but it has other compounds because it's a natural, alive, and good quality food. It's got the indole 3 carbanols, and I love that whole cruciferous family. However, it's not super high in antioxidants. So there's a connection between pigment and antioxidants, and very, very important to interact at a cellular level with different colors of pigment. Just as important to look at color and intake it through our optic nerves to feed certain parts of the brain to keep neurons firing and things lubricated up in the central nervous system. So we do have a relationship with color. So I like to challenge people to eat the colors of the rainbow, and however they want to do it, if it's Monday one color and Tuesday the other color, or they're incorporating different colors within the same day. There's also something about eating where you're locally situated on Earth. There is definitely medicine in the area that you are. So connecting to the earth and eating the foods that are in your locality. That's really important. And that also goes for plant medicines as well. When we're in Canada and we're taking ayahuasca in Canada versus because how did it get there, right? It had to, travel a long way. And as humans, we know what it's like to get traveling is hard on your system, right? And so you get tired and you get zapped if you're in a plane. And jet lag is a real thing where our food and our medicines also get jet lagged. So then if you're taking a plant medicine in the country where it's indigenous, it's going to have a lot more potent.
The internet connection is breaking up. Let me just check.
I'm not sure if you're recording. Okay, perfect. So let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And I know this is, by the way, a really long ramble answer because I'm so passionate about food. The way I break down food is, so we've got our macronutrients, right? Fat, carb, protein, and people obsess over these things, and they count their fat grams, and they don't want to go over a certain number, and they have to reach a certain number of protein per meal. I get all of that stuff, but I really want to plant the seed for people to start counting the things that really matter, like the micronutrients, like the polysaccharides and the anti-inflammatories and the bioflavonoids, that the micronutrients are your vitamins and your minerals. So instead of fixating on just one aspect, which is important, there's also a whole other layer that people are really missing. It's not quite the very first thing that they think about. So think about the micronutrients, start counting vitamins, start counting minerals instead, and incorporate herbs like cinnamon, turmeric, rosemary, sage, all of these things. For example, if you're getting turmeric in powder form, there's 0 calories. So you don't have to process calories. You're only getting the medicine, and then go back to that pigment. Look at that brilliant yellow pigment. And yellow is actually the most abundant pigment on Earth. And people will argue and they'll say, no, it's green. Because if you were to take a bird's eye view and look down, that if it's not blue where the ocean is, right, the blue planet, that it's green where the grass is. But here's this, in color theory, green fades to yellow. So it starts off green when it's very rich in chlorophyll and that photosynthesis process is happening, beautiful. What happens when that green pigment fades? Right, and green is not a primary color. So yellow is incredibly important for our bodies, yellow pigment, and it's awesome to get it through different spices like turmeric and curry and foods as well. So yeah, think about using spices just as much as you think about using certain foods and super foods.
Yeah, absolutely. I love spices myself. I love spicy foods, but I also love to work spices and also medicine and herbs, of course. But what I also recently, I was chatting to someone else and interviewing someone else, and she also mentioned like pay attention when you are in the grocery store to what color, when you're in front of your fruits and your veg, what color you're attracted to. And that to me was so interesting because I love colors, but I never really looked at it like that. And then also go back to what is that then teaching you, because maybe you need more of this or that because you're attracted to that specific color or that vegetable or like your fruit. And that's kind of what you're saying now as well with the colors, how powerful they are, and that it's so much more than just what we see in front of us. So that's so lovely.
This absolute tickles me. So you just brought up the difference between color theory and color therapy. And there's both, and they're different, and they're both important to understand. Every color invokes mood and feeling.
Yes.
Right. So, for example, they say, whoever they are, they say, never paint a baby's room like bright red. And the reason why is because red is power and it's passion and it's love, but it can bring on anger and intensity. So it might be a little bit better if you know, there's always neutrals, but if you're looking for an actual color, there's blues, which are more calming, like the ocean, although the ocean is deep and there's other layers to that color. It typically has a little bit more of a serene kind of feeling. And look at purples, light purples, lilacs. I'm actually looking at the beautiful flowers that you have. And purple, there's a richness and a steadfastness to purple. There's a reason why the monarchy over our history always used to cloak themselves in the purple color, right? So
absolutely.
That is a whole other
yes, absolutely. Do you have a favorite color? I'm curious to know now.
Yes, and it's funny that it fluctuates. I'd say that purple is one of them, but also green.
Okay.
Green is one of my favorite colors for sure. It just tickles my eyes.
Yes, nice.
What's your
all of them. Yellow. Oh, quite a while already. Yes. Yeah. And for quite a long time, I had this yellow backpack and it was literally traveling with me everywhere. And it was always like, there you have the backpack with niche. But it was so funny because it was a bit bigger and it was like bright yellow, but I loved it.
It's happiness. Yellow is
happiness. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Sunshine, warmth, openness.
Yes, absolutely. So that's stunning. So in terms to go back to the food a little bit more, what I learned myself as well is that lots of time when we are holding on and not letting go of our emotions, right? Then I immediately feel it in my body. I just know that I keep things in my body, you know, and like just a few years ago, like I was like carrying much more weight, and that's just because I was still in my pain body, and I did not let go of these emotions, and they were just coming to the surface, right? So even I think even if I would have changed my diet, which I did at a certain time, and I changed it and I lost a lot of weight, it came back because I had to face certain demons within. So for me, in that way, food is also related in a way, yeah, to your emotions, because at the end you can kind of eat what you want. Obviously, the better you feel about yourself, and I feel the more you heal, your food habits will become healthier too. So what's your take on that, food and your emotions and holding on to things in terms of your body and the looks of your body?
I would never tell anyone to eat white bread. I will
No.
say that. That's my preface. It is more important to eat and feel safe and grounded and grateful than and in the company that you keep, that you love and trust. And if you are eating in that environment, have a hot dog on a white piece of bread, because it would be healthier on an energetic level to
Mm.
digest, absorb, and assimilate that than it would be to eat an organic salad in company that you don't feel safe, that you feel judged. Because you're not going to be in the proper digestive state anyhow. So you're not what you eat, you're what you digest, absorb, assimilate. Further down the line, there's eliminate. How well are we detoxifying?
Mm-hmm.
So there's that when it comes to food, but also that we go through that same metabolizing process with emotions. Something happens, how are we digesting it? Are we allowing ourselves to sit in that and absorb it, like sit in the shit and be like, oh wow, this happened, and then assimilate it and integrate it into your experience. So in a sense, there's no mistakes, there's lessons. And can you actually integrate that lesson moving forward into your everyday experience as it's unfolding, so it's not going to be repeating for yourself? And then of course that detoxification, are you holding a grudge? Because I've
Mm-hmm.
actually made a connection. Participation, it's real. One equals the other. So when people have a hard time forgiving people or situations, then oftentimes we'll see in their client consultations that they're constipated and they're having a hard time letting go of
Mm.
shit. But I'm speaking metaphorically, of course.
Yes.
It is all connected, and I think gratitude changes everything. So whatever it is that you're eating or drinking, whether it's your third cup of coffee, because I know some people who love that ritual but then will start to feel guilty after one cup, and
Mm.
it's like that guilt will charge your adrenals. You'll adrenalize and start producing cortisol, and that's worse than the actual coffee that might give you solace in the moment for 10 minutes while you sit and drink it in stillness and silence, and get out of the clamor of your mind and like get connected to your physical body, because that's what food does. It connects us back to our vessel.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. It's actually beautiful how you describe it, indeed, because it's so related to how we feel. And I think often we eat and we feel guilty. That happens often, and there is no like, you can enjoy like even that piece of cheese or whatsoever. If you feel like, you can just enjoy it for that moment in time. And yeah, I think looking to self constantly and keeping yourself in check with your emotions as well. Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
right. And listen to your body, because the body talks and the body has so much wisdom. It's infinite. So let's say you have that piece of cheese, and then the next day you have a ball of mucus in your throat that you just can't quite swallow down or expel out, and it's just there. And are you able to, at that point in time, make the connection to certain foods and certain symptoms? And do we have the discipline and willpower to remove something that we know is not working for ourselves. And then ask ourselves, like, are we addicted to playing small? Are we addicted to having those symptoms? Do our symptoms define us? And I've eliminated a lot of things from what I view eating.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I, for example, do not eat any cheese anymore. But I do know that when I would go to Holland, I will eat like a little bit of the cheese there, and I will allow myself that, So, but I just know my body feels so much better without the cow milk and without the cheese and without so many other things. And I just discovered that along the road, and I just was like, okay, but this is absolutely worth it not eating it anymore. Same for meat. But I think, yeah, exactly what you say. Are you willing to let go of those things again? That's the question.
When you're on your healing journey, there comes a point in time where we have to ask ourselves, am I willing to let go of what's making me sick? And sometimes it's food, and sometimes it's a person, and we're in a toxic relationship. Sometimes it is a limiting thought that we're constantly, we have 60,000 thoughts a day. How many of them are recycled from 10 years ago? And at what point do we turn inwards, our third eye, right? Our two eyes see out and our third eye sees in, that we start using that eye to look into our psyche and determine what are the thoughts that are holding me back. Because at the end of the day, you're eating clean, but you're thinking filthy thoughts about yourself and others. An organic tomato is still going to bleed just the same.
Yeah.
So thoughts really, really matter.
Yeah. And I think isn't it like the detoxing of everything? So not only clean food, but like you said, like your emotions, your thoughts, but also what you see on social media, what you watch on television, what you listen to on the radio. It's so much more. The people you meet with and connect with and hang out with. And I think there are so many different layers that we should be looking into in that way.
Absolutely. I'm just going to let this little guy up.
Yeah, so cute.
My dog after one of my favorite superfoods. This is goji, like goji berry.
Oh, they're so cute. They're still so small, so cute.
Want to lay down? So the other point that I wanted to make in regards to food is oftentimes we think of the macronutrients as fat, carb, protein, but I also think that story is incomplete, that there is very likely a fourth macronutrient. And the answer is quite obvious. And the most important macronutrient is water, right? Because water is the carrier in and water is the carrier out. How does fat and how does carb, protein, how do they get into the cell? How does the waste material, the output, leave the body? What's the carrier? And the answer is always water. So to remember, we're columns of ocean water. We're not spring water, although drinking spring water is important. We are salt water beings. We've got to embrace our inner saltiness. And that's the salt is our electricity. And remember, we're electric before we're chemical. So when you think a thought, that's an electrical impulse. And then down at a cellular level, you have a valence with an electron, a proton, and then a neutron, which is your stabilizing. But when we lose our electrical charge, we have an unpaired electron, that's a free radical. And so I love to tell people, put a pinch of sea salt or rock salt into crystal salt into your water and make sure you're drinking plenty of water. It is the most important macronutrient. How long can you survive without food? Well, I've personally done fasts for 2 weeks where I don't eat solid food, but I'm drinking green juice. I'm drinking salt water, which is one of the best nutrients, and it's got all the minerals. So electrolytes are minerals. And it's just really another great connection to make for people, because we've been taught a hypothesis about sodium that is simply not true. It's the great salt deception. And it's one of the biggest lies, because we need salt. Salt is not just sodium. Sodium is one of the 80 trace minerals found in sea salt. It's just one. So when I say salt, I'm not referring to Windsor's table salt, where they've stripped all of the other trace minerals in their perfect ratio, the way that Mother Gaia, nature, presented it to us, because we're in this symbiotic lockstep relationship with nature, that it was just provided for us as we need in the perfect matrix for our bones, for our blood, for our organs, for our fluids, for our eyes, teeth, the whole bit, right? And then they strip salt and they give you sodium and, man-made synthetic iodine, which is not the iodine that we need for our functioning, for our thyroid, for the endocrinology of the body. There's different forms, and I won't get too carried away with this, but sea salt is important. And that's actually how we get the word salary from sale, which is salt. Back when people used to get paid in salt, because if you had salt, you could survive. So we're walking columns of ocean water. We don't have to be scared of the elements. We are the elements. And salt is the original form of electrolyte. So instead of going to the store and buying yourself a Gatorade, which is probably tap water with food coloring and GMO sugar with synthetic, man-made electrolytes, go to the source, and the source is sea salt or rock salt from the Himalayas.
That's beautiful. Thank you for that. Also pointing out the salt. Yes, learned something new here. Yeah. And in terms of body movement, because you're also a yoga teacher, right? And like for me, it's actually quite funny, because I get that question a lot in terms of meditation and practicing yoga, and I never did that. It's only in the recent years that I kind of got it, because I was like, it's way too slow and it doesn't feel like a workout, because that was how I was like before. And now I love to start my day with a yoga practice, because it just gets me in the flow and it's moving the energy and terms like things like that. But it took me a while to get there. And now I completely get it and I love it. And I also really love the intuitive yoga, that you can just listen to your body and go with the movement, whatever is coming up for you. So what is it that you exactly teach, and how did you get started and practicing yoga, and what did it shift for you in your life?
Oh my goodness. I always tell people yoga ruined my life, because I was superficial. I cared about what people thought. I was a shallow breather. I was a shallow person. I looked up to fake people with fake body parts. I was in that industry doing makeup, and it was intrinsically losing its value. So I was shifting at that point in time. And then I got into yoga. And when I did my initial training, it was a month in Nicaragua. And I didn't even I brought a carry-on. So I traveled light, and it changed me completely. I had one pair of flip-flops. I had a few different yoga tops and pants. And it was really easy for me to decide what I was going to wear every day, because I only had 2 or 3 options. And I didn't, stand idle in front of my closet. And I would just go straight to yoga and learned how to breathe for the first time in my life. I was 30 years old when I learned how to breathe. And it started showing me what I was really dealing with. And As far as the challenge in the practice and certain poses that my
Mm.
body couldn't necessarily do at that point in time, but I was trying to do them, and I would land a pose and then hear my own thoughts. For the first time, I got to hear that I was basically putting myself down, that I wasn't mean to anybody else, but I was
Mm.
mean to myself. And that's what it showed me. And I was like, oh my God, I need to start like cheering myself on instead of landing a pose and then basically telling myself, you're doing this wrong. You can't do this. You look silly. You're breathing too loud. Fix your shirt. Your fat is hanging out. Like all of those things started like, of course, this is not out loud. This is like what is taking up space in my head. And some of the things I actually believed in my heart. So that's what yoga did for me. It literally shook me up and then cleared so I could actually see and discern what I just didn't want to be and identify and believe about myself anymore. You know, movement is so critical because when we are upgrading our body, we have to upgrade our movement. We can't move the same way as we did 5 years ago because every decade is going to bring new opportunities. Notice how I didn't say challenges, new opportunities, right? And things will change in our body. And it's accepting that maybe I can do some things better in my today, now moments that I could do 10 years ago, and maybe I could do them better 10 years ago. And it doesn't matter that you don't have to compare yourself to that person or who you were not even 5 minutes ago. It's like just get really present. But movement is one of the most important things because it's how we animate our vessel. And it basically is what makes us a life form. When you look at, I mean, everything is living and alive and has an
Mm.
energy and a vibration present in. There's always movement, even if that movement is a very subtle respiration that's happening on a micro level, or it's, you know, a human doing being yoga and moving like the fine intricate fingers and toes. And so I just found that it connected me again back to my body. It showed me exactly what I was dealing with, who I wanted to be and who I was, so I could bridge the two and still continue evolving, because who I want to be today is different than who I'm going to want to be in 5 years. But in 5 years, in that recognition that I can do things in that moment to get there, and that my future self will thank me for. So it changed me. I came back from my yoga teacher training after a month, and I opened my closet, and I literally was like, oh my God, there's too many options. I have so many clothes, I have so many shoes, I have so many belts and purses. I purged. I got rid of so many things that I thought were important because that's how I that's how I obtained my own value.
Mhm.
I was in that industry. I was surrounded by it. I was listening to it. I was paying attention to it. And in 1 month, I literally had a paradigm shift. I stopped paying attention to all those things. They weren't even on my radar anymore. I lost friends. And when I say lost, I mean, maybe it's the wrong word. Certain friendships, they no longer were in existence
Mhm.
because there was just too much of a discrepancy. We put value on different things and we focused on different things, and it just completely shifted my focus, and it brought me closer home into my heart.
Beautiful. Yeah, beautiful. And it's also really about shifting those energies, like what you explained as well, like in your experience, like everything is movement and everything is constantly changing. And that's my takeaway now with practicing yoga, is that it's constantly changing those energies in your body too, and keeping them in a flow, or when you feel like, yeah, you can feel in your body when the energy is not in a flow, and then you can work through that. And I think it can bring you so much more than just the practice. But it took me also quite some time, also only in my 30s, that I could make that connection with the whole yoga practicing. But yeah, beautiful.
I had a first time experience at that point. Now it was not, certainly not an isolated incident, where I was practicing and I felt in the flow and just really great about my practice that day, and I surprised myself, because the body is stronger than the mind will often
Mm.
give it credit for. And so I guess I was underestimating myself. And then I was laying in Shavasana, and I had a moment of, I'm just really proud of myself for not giving up when I wanted to give up, but I plowed through it with you know tenacity and grace and breath. And then all of a sudden I had this eruption of tears that
Mm.
I couldn't just let them stream nicely and do one of those silent cries that nobody else in Shavasana would even realize that the girl in the middle of the classroom was going through, but it erupted out of my body like a volcano. I had no idea it was coming either.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, I burst out into tears, and it was loud. And I was snotting and sniffling and panting. And then I curled up into a little ball. And that lasted probably like a good 2 minutes, but it felt like an eternity, because I'm thinking, these poor people who are laying in their shavasana have to listen and witness me having some sort of incredible release.
Release.
and
Yes.
and then I realized the only person judging me is me.
Yeah.
And I just needed to let go of whatever needed to come out of my body. And I suspect it was from my groin and my hip and my sacral area. And because that was a hip opening class. So yoga creates space where we
Mm.
were stuck. And yoga will not just physically stretch you out, but emotionally help you iron out some of the things that have been suppressed and furthermore repressed, that need to be expressed. And so it's a full expression. And now I cry here and there, and it's not nearly as eruptive from my body, but it indeed is a beautiful release. And I found emotionally, yoga is probably more of a mental workout and an emotional workout, and even a spiritual workout, than it is a physical workout for me.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I can relate to that. But yeah, you need to start to feel that indeed, that it can do so much more also in terms of your limiting beliefs, because a lot will be brought up to the surface, which is beautiful, of course. On that, now we're talking shifting energies and emotions. Let's jump onto the plant medicine. And I think specifically mushrooms, right? Microdosing mushrooms that you also have experience with and work with. Um, like, what's your experience with it? And do you use it working with clients as well? And how do you integrate it?
Wow, beautiful, beautiful questions. So it first of all, nobody told me that I should do this. It became on my radar. So for some reason, my focus went to um, plant medicine as a modality that I could use to perhaps expedite my own healing on a deeper level, in conjunction with some of the other shadow work that I was doing. And I actually didn't start microdosing. I don't want to call it the hero's dose, but it certainly wasn't a microdose. And I experienced things that I needed to see about myself. Another name, I don't know if this is like a round the world kind of thing, but at least where I was from in Canada, some of my friends were calling mushrooms the golden teachers. And I had
Oh,
heard
that's
that
funny.
name.
Yeah, that's like here, like we have a form of ayahuasca as well. They call it the golden lady. So that's why that's funny because they call it the golden teacher, and it's referring to mushrooms. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a certain resonance with gold, and it's alchemy. And
Mm.
so mushrooms date back hundreds and thousands of years ago, and they actually, apparently, one story of how the shamans started connecting with this medicine was they were observing nature and deers, and the deers were eating the mushrooms, and they could tell that the deers behavior was altered in a way, not a dangerous way or a bad way. It was actually the opposite. Deers are very spiritually connected animals to begin with. And so I believe that's connection. And there's a lot of folklore as well with mushrooms that we would, that little mushroom icon with the red top
Mm-hmm.
and the white dots, that's similar to what they look like, certain species of these mushrooms, and that they would collect them from the ground, and they obviously now have a lot of moisture, so they would then put them in kind of a pine tree in order to absorb the vitamin D from the sun and lose some of their moisture. And it looked like a Christmas tree with the red bulbs. And so, that there's lots of stories like this that just tell us that we as humans have been connected to these things for a very long time. And a lot of our other traditions actually come from these plants. And I know certain kinds of mushrooms can absolutely kill you and they're absolute poison. And then there's other mushrooms that can open your heart and open your third eye and show you things that you need to see. So that was my first experience. I did it in a circle form with somebody who was more or less facilitating the ceremony. And it taught me about the power of setting an intention prior to consuming the mushroom, and what it is that you want to achieve or let go, or perhaps it's you want to communicate with someone or an angel. And so I set a very clear intention, and I was nervous and I wasn't even sure if it was going to work, whatever that meant. And my intention was answered in such a way that I knew that it was a gift, but also something that needed to be respected and not abused. And perhaps some people take them recreationally, and that's no judgment. We all have our own journey. I just believe the power of intention is everything, and that we're really missing out if we're not setting an intention. And so that was my first experience. And then it popped on my radar about micro dosing. I was actually at a health show in Canada, and I met Paul Stamets. And I started looking more into Paul Stamets, and I bought a few of his books and chatted with him for a little bit. And so then I did start microdosing the Paul Stamets way. And I know there's other people in the field that talk about very similar protocols. There's not just one protocol, but I would take a very small amount at the beginning of my day, and I would take it with another mushroom like lion's mane, more of a medicinal, not necessarily like a tree mushroom, a super
Yes.
immune boosting mushroom. chaga, reishi, cordyceps, turkey tail, lion's mane, one of those. And also niacin, which I
Yes. Yeah.
three, to vasodilator. And so it opens up, we have 60,000 miles of veins, arteries, and capillaries. And so that you get this beautiful flushing reaction, and it delivers the medicine a little deeper and a little faster. So I started doing this and pairing it with other things and setting some really clear intentions. And it's really accelerated my growth and my connection to spirit. You know, I I didn't ask to be psychic. I believe that we all have psychic abilities, and we're blocking them, because what started happening to me was, it was intuition times 10. It was clairvoyance like I had never had before. And also, I was hearing things like voices that were guiding me in they were guiding me inwards and upwards. And I started to remember things that I completely forgot, that perhaps they were blocked, and everything started to make more and more sense to me. When I started doing that, everything again in my life changed. I was able to identify a hindering pattern that I had in regards to men, and the men that I would typically go for, and I just saw it, and like I'd never seen it before. And I was a little older as well. I didn't wake up as a teenager or a woman in her mid 20s. I was in my 30s when I started really answering the calling. And so that's actually when and how I met my husband. It was absolute synchronicity. I was 35, and all of a sudden, in the first basic 10 minutes of us connecting, and it was 100% platonic and non-sexual, I heard a voice tell me, "You're going to marry this man." And I had never ever thought that before, ever. And I was like, looking over my shoulder, I was like, what? Like that's crazy. So things like this would happen more and more, and I would just listen. And I get hits from my future self all the time, helping me in navigating my daily decisions and what's important, and how to move through this chaotic time. As we're saying, you know, our world is in a lot of fear, and I can see through it all. I can see through lies. I can feel the vibration of truth in my heart. I have I believe that when I started micro dosing, it helped me connect to who I am, because I was taught in school who I was not. And for a very long time, I lived that life in in a way that was settling in every area, and I couldn't see my patterns, and I couldn't see my blind spots, and I was blocked. And it was kind of, it was all myself, whether it was conscious or unconscious, that all of those veils and illusions became, they dissolved. And now I see. And of course, I know that my journey is just getting started as well.
Yeah, that's so beautiful how you're also describing it, because for me too, like the medicine, they just like, I'm so grateful for them, such beautiful teachers, to show you certain ways, but to also connect to self and to, yeah, to see beyond. And I think that's it, to really truly see and Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful that you also have that experience with the microdosing, because it can give and bring you so much in terms of love, but also personal growth, if you use it correctly. And that's I think it's beautiful that you pointed out the intentions, because you can communicate with the plants. And you can already communicate with the plants, of course, before you even start microdosing, or if you take a microdose. And it's so magical, like, and so much love. I just feel so much
Yeah.
love for the plants.
I'm so glad you brought that word up, magic, because of
Yeah.
course it exists. Of course it's real, and that it's our birthright to live a
Yes.
magical life and to believe in magic, just like when we were little children and we knew that it existed. So there's that little child element that
Mm.
it brings back the aliveness and that childlike wonder and curiosity.
Yes.
And sometimes as we become an adult, we lose touch with that aspect, which is so, so important. And I realized I didn't answer one of your questions in regards to, do I work with clients and these medicines? I have never facilitated. I have listened to people very, very carefully. And when there's a readiness, that I will answer questions and encourage in certain ways that I can without being suggestive at all. I want them to come to that conclusion on their own. But yes, I have actually talked to certain clients and I've seen some miraculous, that's
Mm.
another word, the miracle factor,
Mm.
the X factor come back into people's life, miracles happening when it comes to same things as I had experienced, but different parts of their bodies. So, like instant healing for a trauma that happened to an organ system or an organ that they had removed, and all of a sudden they can connect it to an experience that they
Mm.
had, that they were a young child and it just never made sense for them to make that connection. Well, these medicines can offer that to you.
Yes.
So, again, that readiness factor is huge, but I have witnessed absolute breakthroughs with these medicines. And there are so many different types of plant medicines
Yeah.
around the world, even animal medicines. There's plant and there's animal medicines, and that we have as humans lived with plants and animals in a very cohesive way. So it makes sense that when we're doing these kind of medicines, that has that same cohesion.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And it's a beautiful way to, like what you pointed out before, to let go of the old programming, because that's all we are doing. We truly remembering who we are and letting go of all the mind control and programming and all the things that we have been experiencing for so many years and generations actually. So
Generations. Yeah.
yes, yeah, it's absolutely. So, how can people find you? If they would like to work with you, how can we support you? Where can we find you online?
Thank you. So I have a website, and right now I'm hosting a program, a 4-week program. It's actually 5 week. I threw in a bonus week, and it's called Be Your Own Best Friend. And my website is Goddessa. That's GODDEESSA beauty.com. And in this 4-week program, I help women, first of all, identify what their limitations are and what their patterns are, and the certain things that are holding them back. And it's mostly about the head, right? Because more important than what you learn is what you unlearn. So we focus a lot on unlearning in the first week. The second week, we jump into the heart, And we all need to mend our hearts just a little or a lot. And so we do a tremendous amount of forgiveness. We talk about addictions. Week 3, we tap into the body, pun intended, because we talk about marma points, tapping points, emotional freedom technique, really reconnecting to the body and movement, and so on and so forth. It's about really honoring the vessel that you're in, and listening to the subtle ways that the body whispers, and honoring the body when it does present a symptom, instead of blaming the body, because that might have been the old instant and immediate reaction. So awareness is everything. And the last week is a little bit more spiritual, so we kind of cover the mind, body, spirit aspect, where we talk about different breath works and actually shamanic breathing. It's kind of psychedelic. You can reach these states of consciousness without plant medicine. Of course, it's there as a tool to use, and you don't want to become dependent or overuse one tool and forget about. And so we go over some breath work and some meditations. And that's really what my passion is, as well as talking food and beauty. I think the inner work is equally as important. And then you can eat well and use clean beauty products. You're not absorbing all the chemicals, but it's the kind of work that is most important, in my opinion. So that's where you can find me. My website is goddessabeauty.com. That's DDS. And then, of course, on Instagram, you and I are friends. I have 2 pages, my personal page, which is Carley Simandl, and my business page, which is Goddessa Gifts.
Yes, I will add everything as well when I post it so that people can find you. So thank you so much for this lovely chats and all your knowledge and sharing it with us. I learned some new things. So yes, grateful for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sister. I love our time together. I learned from you on our first live as well, and something that I apply to my everyday life as well. So it's equal and reciprocal.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I hope we do this again.
Yes, we should.
Okay.
Thanks.
We'll definitely be in touch.
Yeah.
Have the best day ever, Nishanthi.